Hey, what's going on, church family? Thank you guys for tuning into today's Random Access. There's a lot going on in our world today. I spoke about this previously in today's daily prayer. I said it seems like that, according to the media sources, that everything we see on the news is war, war, war. We're at war with COVID-19. We're at war as the nation of God with one another regarding race relations. We're at war with Democrats versus the Republicans. We're at war with should we wear a mask or not wear a mask. And it's getting on my nerve. And it will have you thinking that where's God in all this? And as a people of God, we are called to bring a proper standard of how we should respond to the world's problem. Jesus told Peter that the knowledge that he has that the gates of hell will not prevail, that upon that knowledge, God will build his church. And the church is supposed to knock down every gate of hell, where it seems like the gates of hell are prevailing in our nation right now as to race relations, the Black Lives Matter movement versus those who say all lives matter. And even that I think there's a big misunderstanding as to what both parties are saying. The Black Lives Matter movement is saying that black people exist too. That we are the ones who are being, it seems, unfairly tried on the curb and executed by police officers for crimes that we haven't even had a trial or been convicted on. And that's how all this started with Trayvon Martin. He was just walking home from the convenience store with some Skittles, and the young man was assassinated. I shouldn't say assassinated, he was killed. You know, and what's a Christian's proper response? What are we supposed to do during times of conflict? We are the ones that the Apostle Paul said, we are the ones that would judge the world by the way we live our lives. And I thought, what better way as a Christian to deal with these issues is to have a conversation. We need to have conversation. Tough questions, hard questions, but a conversation nonetheless. Judgment free, but we're open to criticism and also open to heal. So I've asked one of my best friends in the entire world to join with me tonight on this conversation. His name is Kendall Nash, and I'm going to bring Kendall on. Give- just give you a little background. What's going on, bro?
What's up, Derek? Can you
Everything
hear me?
okay, bro? I can hear you. So let me ask you this, brother. You and I have
All
been
right.
friends for nearly 20 years, right?
Yeah.
We've been friends for nearly 20 years. And during that time, I would say that we both have gone through many trials and tribulations. And in those trials, you've seen me at my best. You've seen me at my lowest, right? And I've
Right.
seen you at your best, and I've seen you at your lowest.
Definitely.
As a white man, I can say this as my brother that you're a white man who doesn't have a lot of people. That you are a white man who's working just like I'm working. You know, you
Right.
are a white man. There's this thing called, I'm pretty sure you heard of it, white privilege. And many people, when they hear white privilege, they automatically go on a defense. And what I do is I
Yeah.
think about brothers like you and some of the other brothers that we went to college with. You're not broke. You're working a normal 9 to 5. Sometimes I think you're working with 16-hour days.
Yeah.
You're working
Sometimes.
a long time. And because you're working a long time, it doesn't seem like you're privileged. That's not fair
Right.
to call you privileged, you know? And I've seen, I can think of a time, brother. You know what? I'm jumping the gun. Tell the people who you are.
Okay. So again, you already introduced me. I'm Kendall, right? So first, I'm your brother, right?
Yeah.
First, so I just say I'm just trying to ride your coattails. Okay, so just trying to be where you're at and be in your spotlight. But no, but seriously, like you mentioned, we've known each other, been brothers for almost 20 years now. Met in college, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I think we've kind of grown up together, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We you know before either one of us got married, before either one of us had kids, before either one of us knew what the heck we were doing in life, right? We
Yeah.
just kind of figuring it out together, and it's been a I know a joy for me to kind of be
Yeah.
able to walk through that life with you, right? And I think
Yeah.
you'd say the same thing. So, um, I think back even when we were in college, you mentioned, going through tough times, right?
Oh
We
yeah.
all go through tough times. It doesn't matter what race you are, you
No, it
struggle,
doesn't.
right? You go through difficult times. And when you mentioned that, it reminded me of one specific instance when we were in school.
I think I know what you're
We
talking
hadn't,
about.
you probably know where I'm going with
Yeah.
this, right? Our first semester together. And I
Yes.
remember, I think, I don't remember if it was you or Mario driving. One of
I
y'all
was
was
driving.
driving.
I was
You was
driving.
driving. Mario was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back seat.
And hold
And I remember we were all
if
do
you
it.
Emily, listen to this. This is a
Yeah,
good example. Listen to this.
yeah.
Go ahead.
So I just remember we were all kind of having a pity party, man. We were all just kind of down our luck. Things were kind of tough. I remember Mario made a comment. You made a comment about how,
I
man, I
don't
don't
have a
have a
job.
job. I ain't got a job right now. And Mario said, man, I know what you mean. I ain't got no car.
Yo.
And I'm sitting in the back seat going, man, I ain't got a car or a job, right? And we just kind of all busted out laughing
Yes.
because that's all we could do was laugh at it,
That's
right?
all we could do.
But you know, you go through those difficult times, and I think that sometimes I think for a lot of white people, right, who are in those situations even now,
Yes. Yeah.
especially in the midst of everything that's going on with the pandemic, a lot of people have lost jobs, right?
Yes.
Black, white, Hispanic, doesn't matter. People going through difficult times in their life, and they're going, man, I sure don't feel privileged. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think there is a natural tendency to get defensive and feel
Yeah.
like when people use the phrase white privilege, that somehow it's an attack on me, right, or an attack on white people, and it's really not, right. So what I try to explain that to my other white brothers and sisters and friends and family is that when we talk about it, you can't really compare when we're talking about privilege, right? A poor white person with a rich black person, right? When you're talking about privilege, you're really talking about, the poor black person and the poor white person, right? And it's not a means of blaming one person. It's not to say that it's my fault that this person's in a particular situation or circumstance that they're in, but it's just a recognition of, hey, in our society that we live in, there are differences, unfortunately, right,
Yeah.
in the way oftentimes black people are treated and looked at and thought of compared to how white people are, right? And that's really all it is. It's as simple as that. And I think that as a Christian, I try to shed that spirit of defense, right? And try not to be defensive of it, and just really try to understand and be as empathetic as I can, and recognize that, hey, you know what? Yeah, of course I've gone through difficult times. I wasn't, spoon fed. Things didn't always go my way, right, in life. And that's true, I think, of most Americans, but it doesn't change the fact of the racial inequities, right, and inequalities and injustices that we see in our society. And we have to be able to look at a broader picture rather than, especially as Christians, versus saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me, and look at our brothers and sisters and really see what are they going through right now,
Yeah.
right, with everything that's going on, whether it's police brutality, right, or whatever it is. Even with the COVID-19 thing, right, we know statistically, yeah, everybody's losing jobs, but even that disproportionately is affecting minorities, right? So it's just it's being able to say, look, I know nobody's blaming me for it, right?
Yeah.
But we're saying we all have a responsibility to to be honest and have an honest dialogue and honest conversation and try to come up with real solutions to that problem and recognize that that is a problem, and we can't solve it if we don't recognize first that there's a problem there. So
And I'll even say this, Kendall. The thing that Mario's the other trio here of
yeah,
the of the brothers. Mario and I first met Kendall. It was July. It was January 2nd,
Yeah.
2000, I think it was 2003 or was it 2002?
No. It was 2000, man. 2000.
2000.
2000.
Wow. See,
So
I'm right
yeah,
on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because you remember, it was before September 11th
It
happened.
was
You
before,
remember?
you're right.
Yeah.
And
So actually, it was
so,
2001. I'm sorry, it was September 2000. It was January 2001 is
so
when
I
it was.
remember
Yeah.
Mario and I, we met Kendall. You know, we walked in his room, and you got to know me. Oh, Shane's watching. What's going on, Shane?
What's up?
And you got to know Mario and I. We just walked in Kendall's room, and we asked him, say, "Hey, man, you want to watch a movie?" And he was like,
I
"Yeah."
remember.
And he's like, "What you got?" He said, "We got a scary movie, or we got backyard wrestling." And I remember Mario loved backyard wrestling. And to talk about that incident when we were all in the car, I remember shortly thereafter when we all just laughed, one of my tires blew out. And we
Yeah, I
had to push
remember,
the
dude.
car from the middle of
Yes.
the intersection over to a gas station. And
Yeah,
we didn't have enough
I
money
remember.
to go on the tire change. And we had to figure it out.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think that's the issue that we're missing right now. Like you said, that all of us are going through this, man. With
Right.
COVID-19, it's affecting everybody. You know, the wealthy, black, white, yellow, brown, it's affecting all of us. And we have to keep that in mind. Even when the media is trying to say this is a black or white thing. You know, I could think
Yeah.
about Kendall, I could think about we were so poor and we were starving that man, we used to pull our money together just to go to McDonald's and go get something to eat.
Yeah.
And the only thing we
Yeah.
could do was buy apple pies.
Yeah.
I remember we all sat down, we thought, heck, Mario was working at a soup store.
Yeah.
I didn't have a damn job, and
Mhm.
I didn't have a job at all. And you were sitting there saying, hey, you know, we can get clothes for Mario. Said Derek, if you can get, because
Right.
if I can get on that Blockbuster video, we can get free videos. And you said I can get on at McDonald's or Pizza Hut,
McDonald's. Yeah.
we can get free food. And I
Yeah.
remember all of us, we came together with a plan, and that's what we did. You
Yeah,
know?
and I remember, dude, when I started working at McDonald's, I didn't forget when I always closed. I worked the late shift because I worked during the day. And I remember when I left, I knew I had to bring something home.
You had to
You know
bring
what I mean?
food.
I couldn't come home empty-handed. I had to bring something home, man. So yeah, I had to work it out with my manager. Anything that was left over, man, I was taking back to the house.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
remember.
I remember that happened for years because then you went from McDonald's, then you went on and worked at Pizza Hut. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? And how
yeah.
it almost became this survival tactic, you know, that
Right, right.
all the guys in the dorm, when we moved from the Fieldstone, no, what was that? Fieldstone Apartments over to the
Yeah,
Lexington at the time. And
you got a
and
better
then
memory than I
Dylan
do. I wouldn't have remembered all that.
and then Dylan came in the mix and Tom
Yeah,
Graham came in the mix and Ignacio.
yeah.
And now we had it seemed like every race under the face of the sun living in
Right,
this little apartment complex or the building we all were living in, and how we all had to pull our money together just to eat.
right.
And I
Yeah,
think that that's a beautiful picture, man, of what we're supposed to do as the people of God. We're not supposed to point the finger and say that this is your fault, you know?
yeah,
And I think
yeah.
that, man,
And we took care of each other, man. We really did. You know what I mean? All of us did. We took care of each other. You know, like you said, through those good times, through those bad times, we always were there for each other. And when you look back on it, I think that those were very important times I know in my life, right? Because and I've been fortunate in my life that I've been surrounded by a lot of diversity all of my life, right, or most
me
of my
too.
life.
Me too.
But I think in those years, man, where it, like you said, our group, our inner circle was so diverse, and not only just, I'm not talking about just racially, but from different nationalities, different parts of the world, different backgrounds,
Yeah.
economic statuses. I mean, people that with different thoughts and ideas. I remember, man, at night sometimes when we were all in there as a group, some of those discussions got heated.
I
You know what I
remember.
mean? I remember those, but at the end of the day, we all hugged each other and we were good. You know what I mean? And I think that so much of society has got away from that. You know what I mean? Either we just all we do is just talk at each other,
Yeah.
or we just don't talk to each other at all. You know what I mean? And we got to get back to where we can have honest and conversation without being scared of I'm gonna say the wrong thing and somebody's gonna think the wrong thing about me, right? But being able to really ask authentic questions and give authentic opinion, and not be afraid of being wrong. And then, but you got to have an openness, and a humbleness a little bit to be able to say, you know what, you got a point there. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I hadn't really looked at it from that perspective. And I think a lot of it, that's what we're missing. I think it is.
And I would even say this, man, that I appreciate the times that we all struggle, because it made life real.
Right.
And one thing that a struggle will do for anybody, it will throw up all the pretense, all the prejudice you have, and you will see that
Right.
person for who they really are.
Yeah.
And I remember we didn't even have money for entertainment. We
Yeah.
used to just sit around for hours. You said we had those heated conversations. It was actually two people who had heated conversations. The
Right.
rest of us just used to sit and laugh like, here we go
Right.
again.
We
But
ain't gonna call them out
yeah,
on
we're gonna
here though.
call them out. They may be listening.
Right.
Some of them are pastors right now.
Right.
But how, man, that struggle gave us a bond of brotherhood. I mean, we went
Yeah.
from friends to brothers because we all had to survive together. You know what I mean? We were giving each
Right.
other rides to schools. I remember it would be like my car would work and then it would shut down. And Mario had two cars at the time. I don't know if you remember. Mario had one car that broke down in the Kroger parking lot and it sat there for like a month. And then the other car started working. Then my car broke down, and then you got a car, and then we all rode to school with you. And
Right.
we did that, man, for years. And not only
Yeah.
did it create this bond between us, it created this mutual respect that I, being a black man, struggle just like you being a white man struggling. You know what I mean?
Right.
And at that period in time, I saw you as a human. You saw me as a human. You know,
Yeah.
and it opened our eyes to the beauty of God's creativity. Because at the end of the day, every one of the guys in that dorm, only thing we wanted to do is have enough food to eat to make it through the day, finish our homework, and get a good night's sleep. You know what
Right.
I mean?
And have a little fun too.
And have a little fun, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember when we
Yeah.
would go on road trips and how we would all share one one hotel room. Be like
Yeah.
20 people
Yeah.
in one hotel room.
Right. Yep. Yeah. I
Man,
remember. And I think back. You mentioned when you guys first met me, right? When I walked in the dorms, you guys came up and asked me to watch that movie with you, and I just think, you got two black guys from North Memphis. You know what I mean? I'm a white guy just coming to town from Arkansas. There could have been a tendency for you guys to be like, man, he don't want nothing to do with us, or me to be like, you know what, they're not gonna be cool with me. But it wasn't, right? You
no, it
guys,
wasn't.
you
It
guys
wasn't.
embraced me. You asked me to want to watch a movie. I sat right down in the couch right between you, and we watched the movie together, man. And it's been history ever since. You know what I
And
mean?
I,
So
no,
I think it's breaking down those barriers when you start to realize that people, no matter how different they look, or even how different their cultures or their backgrounds or whatever it is, we all want the same things in life.
yeah, we
You know
do,
what I
bro.
mean? The majority of us are really have far more in common than
Yes,
we
we
ever
do.
do differently. You know
Yes,
what I
we
mean?
do.
And I think you don't recognize that until you have authentic, real relationship with people,
Yes.
and you get close to people who maybe look differently than you, or sound differently, or act a little different, or come from a different place. When you do that, when you have those, whether like you mentioned Dylan, and I think of Irina and Diney and these people that we met from all the way on the other end of the
All of us,
world. You
yeah,
know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we all wanted the same thing. We
wanted
all
the
wanted
same thing.
to be successful. We wanted to get a degree or get a good job or take care of our families, and we all were seeking the same thing. And so when you recognize that and you start to have that real relationship, right? That's when you start to realize that it's impossible then for you to buy into the stereotypes
It is,
and the
bro.
biases. You know what I mean? And those biases start going out the window because you start going, I know that's not true, because I know I got too many brothers that not just acquaintances, right? But I got
Yeah,
too many brothers right? That I know what the media is feeding me, or whatever it
Yes,
is,
brother.
social media is
Yes.
feeding me, or whatever it
Yes.
is that's feeding you those stereotypes, those biases. I know it ain't true because I know them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's not them. So I think it really is about relationship, man. And I think that it's unfortunate that we still live in a society that it seems odd to me and you, right? Because it's not the world we live in, but for much of our society, it's still very segregated, right?
Yeah.
That unfortunately most people spend most of their time around people that look like them. And
Yeah.
and come from the same background, maybe think the same way, have the same philosophical or ideological or religious views, right? And that's all they hear and that's all they see all day, every day. And it just makes it difficult for you. It makes it easy, I think, in those situations to buy into those
Yeah.
racial stereotypes, even if you don't realize that's what you're doing. You
Yeah.
know?
And I can think of when me and Tiffany, when we told you guys that we were pregnant. You guys were the first ones that we told. And then we
Yeah.
told our parents and Mario and Shante, and then we announced it to the world. I thought about me and Tiffany said, we want to make sure we're raising Callie in a diverse world.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
we understand that the kingdom of heaven is diverse. You know,
Yeah.
but Tiffany, if one of our kids asked us this question and said, if Callie married a white man, how would you feel? And I looked at a young man in his eye and I said, I would love him like he is my son. I said, I will play pranks on him. I will mess with him. I will, I will embrace that man, as if
Right.
he's my son because, hey, my daughter loved him. They said, well, what if she married an Indian? I said, the same thing. I said,
Yeah.
we are all one, you know?
Yeah.
And I think about even when we were in college and how we talked about our differences. I remember one particular time I was trying a bologna sandwich, and one of the guys that I was sharing a roommate who was sharing an apartment with at the time, he walked into the kitchen and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just making myself some lunch." And he said, "But what are you doing?" And I said, "Cooking a bologna sandwich." And he said, "Oh, I never had it like that. I've always eaten it
Yeah.
at home." I said, "You would like me to prepare it for you?" He said, "Yeah, make it the way that you like it." And he
Yeah.
ate it and he loved it, And I can think about how, and I want to get into stereotypes for a minute. I can think about how me, being a black dude from North Memphis, listen to CCR Clear's
Right.
Clearwater Rock.
Yeah.
And every time I got in the car, I want to listen to some Southern rock.
Yeah.
Now you want to listen to hip hop,
Right.
You listen
Right.
to Nas and Tupac, and I'm like, man, I want to
Right.
listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put on some talking
Yeah.
heads. And just
Right.
how people can look like, what? You know, how you knew more about Biggie Smalls than I did. You know, how you grew up and you went to you said you lived in South Central, right? Or you were walking
Yeah.
through an alley in South Central
Yeah.
Atlanta?
Yeah. Yeah.
And just how life itself, if we like you said, if we only hang around with people that we know who look like us, talk like us, we can really misunderstand each other. You know,
Right. Yeah.
because I always
Yep.
listen to rock music. Because I'm like, this is who I am. Heck, I like Southern rock. I'm gonna listen to
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, I mean, look, even to this day, man, when I get maybe because I'm getting more gray hairs, I don't know, but even to this day, when people find out that that I'm into hip hop, you know what I mean, I still get funny looks. You know what I mean? They still
Yes,
don't believe me. Yeah. So I understand what you mean, and it's again that's why I say it's so important to have relationship. We can talk about it all day long, and we can talk about it from 1,000 foot, you know, per, um, perspective, but until you get down close to people, you know what I mean, and you're authentic with them, that's when real change happens at a personal level.
yes, bro.
Yep.
Let me ask you this: what do you think is holding us as Christians back from embracing one another?
Man, that's a tough question. So I mean there's a number of things, you know what I mean. If we're talking about Christians So when I think of from a racial perspective, I think of just racial unity, right, or Christian unity, whether it's race or ethnicity, whatever the case may be. I think that oftentimes, unfortunately, I think that we as Christians we're looking at these issues not from a strictly biblical perspective or a Christian worldview, but we really are looking at them through a specific cultural lens or a
Mm,
political lens, something right of that nature, and it clouds the way in which we are able to clearly deal with one another, right? And so I think, and then again, I think it's also because I think there's a lot of fear and anxiety around it. We're afraid to talk to people about it, right? Like me and you, we can have these conversations all day long because we've known each other for 20 years. You
yeah,
know what I mean? But there's anxiety when you're talking to somebody that maybe you don't know as well. I know you can speak more to being a black man trying to have these conversations with white people. I can tell you as a white man, there's a lot of white people that are afraid to have these conversations with black people because they're afraid if I say the wrong thing, then is he going to think I'm a racist, right? Is he going to, and all of a sudden, am I going to be discredited? Can I not talk about these issues at all, right? And I do think that, especially right now with all that's going on in our world, I mean, I do believe that a lot of us as Christians who are white and here in America need to do more listening than talking. I truly do believe that because I think that there's a lot that's going on that if you don't experience it, right, it's easy to discredit it. But you need to hear from and really listen to people who are facing it. But at the same time, you know, we got to be in a place of comfortable enough to
yeah,
be able to ask tough questions and talk and have a conversation without all of a sudden, you're canceled now because you said the wrong thing, right?
yeah.
Or you asked the wrong question, And so I think there's a fear there. I think about, I don't know if you saw it, but recently there was a talk that was going on with Lecrae and a white
Yeah,
pastor. I don't remember his name
Mr.
recently, right?
Blessing of
And
Slavery.
yeah. He mentioned the blessing of slavery, right? Which made, when I saw it, obviously made no sense to me, right? I thought it was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. But at the same time, I think that when you listen to the whole conversation, which I went back and did, and you listen to even his apologies after, you realize that, his intentions weren't bad there. You know what I mean? He was trying to do the right thing. He was, he got off track a little bit there, and there's nothing wrong with being called out when you do. But all of a sudden, the mentality was, you know what? We're done with this guy, right?
Yeah,
And he's canceled in a sense that, hey, you know what? You made a mistake. And what that does is it creates an anxiety where white people don't want to engage in the
that's
conversation at all
good.
because they're
That's
afraid of that
good.
kind of thing. So I think that there's got to be a balance that way, right? And it's not to make apologies for people who say insensitive things, but we've got to, when we do that and we make those mistakes, we need to be able to own up to it and say, like he did, hey, you know what? That was stupid. I shouldn't have said that. Now that I think about it, now that people have brought it to my attention, I recognize that that's not the right terminology, right? Maybe there's some bias, some prejudice in me that I didn't know about, right? That's come out even in those words. But we've got to be able to have those conversations in a loving way, right? Especially in the church, I think it's important, and so I think that that's a couple of things there for Christians that we've got to be able to have a comfort level with other believers, right? No matter what nationality, ethnicity, whatever it is, that we can have true dialogue because we're and come to the table with the expectation and the understanding that both sides, right, really ultimately want the same thing, right,
Yeah, let me
and
ask you.
that our intentions are good.
Yeah, let me ask you this. So I want to kind of bridge the gap. I'm going to ask a question. Hopefully, it makes sense. I want you to speak to white brothers and sisters about me, okay? And I want you to dispel any myths that they may have about large black men, okay?
Yeah.
And I'll even go first, and I'll do the same for you, okay? But what I want to do is I want to try to bridge this gap of we're not like you said, we're not that different. Really, the only difference we have is the skin pigmentation and the texture of our hair. You
Right.
know, we all love pizza. Well, some people don't love pizza, but we're Americans. You know, we all love our country. We all pay our taxes. You know, we all want to live in a safe neighborhood and make sure our kids are well provided for. You know,
Yeah.
so I'll say this: black
So,
brothers
but
and
real
sisters.
quick, I just want to say I want you to recognize I resisted the temptation of throwing in a hair joke right
I
then,
know,
just
I
so
know,
you
I
know.
know, I know.
Okay.
I almost said something about. We used to sit beside each other and look at movies, and you would get a little too close to me. I get close to you, I start playing with your hair.
Yeah.
You're like, what? Your hair is curly from mine. You're like, dude, stop touching my hair.
Yeah.
So we do it to y'all too.
Right.
But I'll say this, black brothers and sisters. Not every white person is racist. I can say that in all my years of being alive, I may have met two, but we have got to stop saying all white people are racist. We've got to start saying that these are individual cases. Just because we may have been mistreated by one person, that person's actions should not dictate to us the actions of everyone around. White
Right.
is not wrong. White is beautiful. We have to say that. We have to embrace our white brothers and sisters because they want the same thing that we have. There are plenty of women who I love and care for who are white that I call them mom. Kendall's mom is my number one. She has loved me. She has embraced me. She has treated me like my own. And Mario Hallman can say the exact same thing. We have got to stop putting one people group in a category of hate. Kendall
Yeah.
and his family and the white people who are alive today did not enslave black people. Hear what I'm saying? It is not their fault. They did not enslave us. We've got to stop judging all white people. We've got to let go of the past. In order for us to heal properly, we have to embrace it. Not only white people, we got to embrace brown people, yellow people, and we have to embrace ourselves. In order for us to move forward as followers of Jesus Christ, we got to begin to treat people as individuals. White is beautiful. Say that with me. White is beautiful. If I can say I'm black and I'm proud, Kendall should be able to say he's white and he's proud. He should be comfortable in his white skin. He should not feel uncomfortable when he comes around me. And I'm speaking to you as a black brother about a white brother. Let's embrace each other.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. So what I would just say is to kind of echo that sentiment. Um, obviously we know what the stereotypes are of young black men, particularly large black men, right? And um, whether you deny those stereotypes or not, the reality is that my brother Derek lives in the face of those stereotypes every day. That when no matter where he goes, he's faced with the reality that at least some of the people that see him are going to automatically be threatened by him, even though he is the least threatening person that I've ever known in my life. That if someone needed help, Derek would be the first one to jump up and help him. And unfortunately, there's people that when he did that would feel threatened by him just trying to help. You know, that I can speak to. I know, Derek, you've told a lot of the stories that you face, and I can speak and I can attest to those because many of those are stories that you've told me many years ago. I remember one that I don't even know if you've told this one, but and it's a much maybe less significant than many of the other ones you faced, but I remember it had a big impact on me. I remember one time you borrowed my car
Yep,
and you was
yep,
driving my car in Memphis and you got pulled over. And immediately the officer thought the car was stolen. Car wasn't reported stolen, but all of a sudden made you get out of the car, was about ready to arrest you,
Yep.
kept questioning you on whose car it was, where you got it, was it stolen, right? And I remember when you came back, I don't remember where you went. You just ran off to get something. You came back. I knew you'd been gone a while, and I could see the frustration and the how upset you were with that situation. And I remember sitting there and you retelling me that story of what just happened, you know, and the recognition, you know, just me coming to terms with that's never happened to me, right? How many times in my life have I driven somebody else's car and been pulled over? You know, whether it was my grandfather's car or a car that was in my mom's name or whatever the case may be, and never questioned, right? So recognizing that your reality, the things that you face in life, I have to be able to be honest and say, I've never had to face those types of issues. I don't worry about people being threatened by me. I don't worry about when a cop pulls me over. My biggest concern is, am I going to get a ticket or not, right? I don't worry about him looking at me and immediately seeing me as a threat. So, but yet at the same time, I know you. You know what I mean? I know you as a brother, and I know you well enough to know that you're a person who would never harm anybody. And I think that not just you, Derek, but there's so many, right? The overwhelming majority, almost all, right? I mean, the percentage is so small that you might as well say it's almost zero, insignificant, that the majority, the overwhelming majority of black men are just like you. They're just men who have families, who want to take care of their family, want to do the best that they can with their life, be the best that they can be, and survive in life. And yet there's these are real obstacles, right? And if we're not being honest about that, because we feel like it's a threat to us, or we feel like it places some guilt on us that it doesn't, right? The point is not to be guilty. I can tell you for certain, Derek doesn't want anybody's pity,
No.
right? Doesn't want anybody to feel sorry for him, right? I don't know a black man. I know a lot of black people, and I don't know one who just wants white people to feel bad for them.
No.
That's not the point of any of this,
No.
but it's just a recognition that there is biases, there are inequalities that are real in our society that you, Derek, and many others like you face that I never have to face. You know, and so I have to make a choice. Am I going to just continue to live my life because that maybe doesn't affect me directly? Just live it as if it's not real because I have the opportunity, right? Or we could say privilege of doing that. Or am I going to be honest about it and say, you know, and listen to those stories and listen to those voices and say, I hear what you're saying. I hear you. I see it. I recognize it. Let's see what we can do, all of us, right? It's not just, the onus isn't just on me. It's not just on you. But what can we do together to fix these problems and fix these issues together? And so I would just call on all of my white brothers and sisters to be honest and have honest reflection with yourself about these issues and say, what is keeping me from listening and hearing and responding with empathy and love to the circumstances and the situations that so many in the black community, that people like my brother Derek face every day on a daily basis or on a regular occasion. And I think that we've got to be honest with ourselves and come to that realization that as a society, I mean, so much of this country and what has been built in this country has been built, right, on the backs of African Americans who didn't get to participate in its successes. And so it's not me feeling guilty or me feeling ashamed or me being blamed for what people did a long time ago, for me to accept that reality and recognize that reality and say, now what are we going to do to fix it? How do we fix it? And I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers. I've got some ideas, and we all got ideas. That's why we got to talk them out, and we got to talk about them, and but we can't address the issues if we don't first accept the reality of them. You know, we've got to do that first. And so I think that's where I'm at, and that's what I would ask all of my white brothers and sisters, anybody that watches this video, to be honest with themselves about that, you know, and come to terms with that, and be willing to look at Derek and say, you know what, maybe I would have had a preconception, right, of what to expect from Derek if I saw him on the street and didn't know who he is. But I'm going to go past that bias, and I'm going to stop myself, right, and say, hey, this is just a man, just like I'm a man. He wants the same things I want in life.
Yeah.
I shouldn't look at him any different than I would want him to look at me, you know. And I think that's where we have to start. So that's what I would ask.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah,
I I remember that night that the police officer pulled me over, and I remember him opening up your car door, and I'm thinking, crap, you just got this car, you know, your
yeah,
mom just got you this car.
yeah, yeah,
I don't even think it was a month old. I was just literally going to the gas station to go get something for my stomach because I had a very weak stomach, and I was just
yeah,
gonna come right back home. And I wasn't even speeding, you know,
yeah,
wasn't speeding at all. And I remember the police officer pulled me over, and he called me every racial slur I could think of, and was baiting me to
hmm,
to to escalate, you know.
right,
And I
right.
just can remember thinking, I need to do the bare minimum to say nothing. You know what I mean? To do
Because you're worried
enough.
about my car.
Yeah,
You're not worried about you. You're worried about me
yeah,
getting my car back.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
need
know.
to
I
do the
remember.
bare minimum
Yeah,
so I can make it back, so I can give Kendall back his car. And I remember
yeah,
telling the guy, I said, "Look, man, this is my best friend. He just let me borrow his car. Oh, you don't have a white best friend?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. This is 2003. It's Memphis,
right,
Tennessee.
right.
Like, yeah, like it's not the 1940s anymore." And so he said, "Look, man, you can call him. You can call his mom. I said, I'm just trying to get something for my stomach, man." And then I remember he took his nightstick, and he gestured like he was gonna hit me in the stomach. And I said, "Officer, please don't do that." I said, "I'm not resisting. I'm not doing
Yeah,
anything. I just want to go to the store, get something for my upset stomach, and just make it back home tomorrow. Get my friend." I said, if it's that big of an issue for you, I said, you can put me in the back of the car seat. I was actually in the car seat then. I said, look, just follow me. I can take his car home, and if he just want to arrest me for something, then I'll go to jail. I said, but at least let me get my friend back his car.
yeah,
And I remember being pissed that night, just real upset. Then I thought, well, this is just a reality. You know,
yeah,
my next question is, what can we do as Christians? What can we do to make sure the media isn't controlling this narrative of racial tension? Because in my honest opinion, I don't see racial tension. I see people of all colors standing together against social injustice.
yeah, yeah,
That's what I see. But then there are a group of us who see the total opposite. When they see what's going on in the streets, they see only black people, who are
right.
doing those horrible things. And Black Lives Matter is just for black people when that's not necessarily true. Black Lives Matter is for everyone. You know, it's just that
Yeah,
they stand up against social injustice for black people, but they helped out with the Me Too movement. They helped out with people, the LGBTQ community. What can we
yeah,
do as Christians to not allow the media to put fear in our hearts? Like, how can we
yeah,
guard ourselves from fear this time? What would you say?
yeah. So I mean, I think when we say as Christians, I think you got to start, with prayer, right? I mean, I think that we've got to be intentional about the way that we pray, right? So I pray for you all the time. I know you pray for me and my family. I pray for your family all the time. But we have to pray for our country. We've got to pray for each other, right? And pray for that unity. We've got to be intentional. Unity doesn't happen by accident, right? When
That's
there's a
good.
division or there's a divide between people or between anything, they don't just automatic that division or that divide isn't bridged, just by chance, right? We have to be intentional with it, and I think that one obstacle I think for the church is we've got to recognize that racial reconciliation and unity should be, it has to be the business of the church,
Yes.
right? We've got to lead. We have to lead in this respect. We can't take our cues from the government, from the media,
Amen,
from
bro.
society at large, right? We can't reflect our society in this respect. We've got to be leading and be out front. People ought to be, Martin Luther King, right, historically, very much is very well known, made the comment that, right, the most segregated time of the year is that 1 hour, right, between 11 and 12. And we've got to own that as the church.
Yeah.
We've got to own that and recognize that for far too long, the church was not only complicit in that, right, in whether it's segregation or discrimination or just the division. I mean, those are the things that brought division. But we've got to own that as a church, that we were a big part of that as the church, and we have a responsibility as believers, as Christians, to bridge that gap. And I think that you talked about it with Callie, and we've done the same thing with our kids. Try to be intentional about getting them around diversity and diverse
Yeah.
people, right? And so we're intentional about it with the church that we're at. We're intentional about with the community we live in, with the schools that our kids go to. I look at those things because I understand how important it is for them to grow up
Yeah.
around diversity, so that not to be colorblind, right? But so that they can see the diversity and appreciate it and love it and see that beauty and
Yeah.
recognize that, like you said, that black is beautiful, that it is just as beautiful, right? And that there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing bad about it, right? It's just different, you
Yeah.
know? And there's nothing wrong with seeing the difference. If we say we don't see it, then we're kidding ourselves, right? We
Yeah.
know we actually do see it. The question is, do we appreciate it and not tolerate it,
That's good.
right? But really appreciate it. So I think that as Christians, we've got to pray about it. We've got to seek God wholeheartedly about what can I do? Are there biases? Are there prejudices? Are there things in me, right, that maybe was handed down that I haven't even seen, right? As Christians, we should always be asking the Holy Spirit to find those things that don't please God in our life, right, and weed those things out. And I think that's no different when it comes to prejudice and bias. And so I think we've got to do that on an individual basis, on a personal basis. But then as a church community, we've got to embrace diversity
You
and
got to.
recognize that it is the business of the church,
It
that
is.
the church should absolutely reflect the community around it, right? The diversity around it, recognizing that the body of Christ is, by nature, it is diverse. I mean, it's easy being a white man in America to see the church as primarily white American, and it's not, right? The church is worldwide. It's all
Yes.
over the world. It's multicultural. It's multiracial. It's multinational. And that's in past tense, from those who have been here before us to those who will be here ahead of us. The church is diverse, and so our hearts should be for diversity. And so we've got to be intentional about that, I think, because again, the more relationship you have with people, and understand that Christ in the New Testament and everything you read in there is about relationship, right?
Yeah.
So the more relationship you have with people of diversity, the more you can embrace that, and the more that you have the weapons and the ability to fight off those biases and those things that maybe the media, like I said earlier, kind of give at you. And I think that the other part is that there is sometimes a misconception in the church among Christians that, hey, all we should be doing is just preach the gospel and nothing else, right? And that, is all I need to do is just tell people about Jesus and don't worry about the rest of that stuff. But Dr. Anderson said something one day that really struck a chord with me. I know Dr. Anderson. It's a man that I look up to and have looked up to for a lot of years. He said, as it pertains to racial reconciliation, and I probably won't quote him exactly right, but he made the point that the division among races is a hindrance to the gospel.
Yeah.
Right? It's a hindrance. It hinders me from being able to actually preach the gospel, right? Because we know that Christ, when he reached people, he reached them relationally, right?
Yes, he did.
Incarnationally, where they were at. And if there's a division, if there's a gulf between me and you, that is there because of a racial history in our society, or biases or prejudices that I have in my life or that you have in yours, those things become impediments to me being able
Mm.
to authentically preach that gospel to you, and for you to be able to then accept that gospel that I'm preaching. And so we've got to believe, truly believe, not just say it, but truly believe that racial reconciliation is the job of the church. It's the responsibility of the church first, and the church needs to lead in that regard. And so I think those are things that we have to do as Christians to be able to stand on the word of God and understand that this is our calling at this
Amen.
time in
It
history,
is during this time.
despite whatever is
Yes.
being said in the media,
Yes.
and to recognizing what we've been talking about this whole time, that like you said, we're not that divided. We're really not. We're not as a people, especially in the body of Christ. We're not as divided as the media or as the world would like you to think we are. And I know it
Yes.
because I go to church. I go to church, every Sunday, right, with a diverse group of people, and we worship together, and we love on each other, and we commune together, and we pray together, right? And we're all seeking after the same thing. Again, we're all praying to the same God. We're all, loving each other. We're all part of the same family. And so
Yeah.
that unity is there. And we've just got to make sure that we're being vocal about it, and we're
Amen.
letting the world know that it's there. And I think it happens through Christ. Christ is the unifying power in
Yes.
all of what we're talking about right now. So I think those are just some thoughts that come to mind when you talk about the role of the church, and how Christians fight off those stigmas, or
So
those types of ideas.
I want to bring this to a close. Um, and I got two questions to ask you in our closing. The first one is, why is it important for a Christian to not be silent when it comes to
Yeah.
racial reconciliation?
Yeah, and that's a good question, because I'll tell you, I think there's a lot of people out there who are saying, okay, well, I'm not a racist, right? So, I'm good as long as I'm teaching my kids to not be racist, then I'm okay. I don't have to say Black Lives Matter. I don't have to get out there and be vocal and speak out. And I think that the answer to that, as far as I'm concerned, is that silence is complicit. It
Mm.
really is, right? When the Bible teaches us, whether you're talking Old Testament, New Testament, throughout, right, the principle of seeking justice, right,
Yes,
of
seek
reaching
justice.
out for justice, seeking it, and speaking out against it, right? You see it. I mean, if you read any of the minor prophets, right, you're going to see those guys are speaking to and speaking out against injustices. And I think that we have to follow that lead, and we have to say, look, if it's important to God, then it's got to be important to us. And I'm gonna tell you, if it's important to you, then you're gonna speak out about it,
That's good, brother.
right? If it's important to you, it's gonna come out your mouth. If it's not, if you're not talking about it, if you're not speaking about it, then the question then is it really that important to you? And so I
That's
think it's
good.
important that the church speaks out and is vocal about it, so that people understand and know that they hear them, and that they know and that they recognize that this is something that's real and something that we have to address. We can't do it if we're quiet. So I think that absolutely the church is, as Christians, we've got to be vocal, and we've got to speak out, and we got to do more than speak. We got to put some action to it, and be willing to act upon those things when we see them that are wrong, and do whatever it is that we can do. And for some people that may have huge influence, right, can do a lot, and some people maybe feel like they're doing a little, but everybody's got to do their part and got
Gotta
to
do
do
it.
whatever they can.
I'm
You
gonna
know,
add
and all of us, I'll say this and then I'll get it back to you, but I think all of us as Christians, we're not just Christians, right? We're Christian business people, or we're Christian
come on,
politicians, or
bro.
we're Christian teachers, or we're Christian parents, or we're Christians at something else in the world, and we have a responsibility, right? I have a responsibility in business that I am doing my part to make sure that I am fixing the inequalities and the biases and the prejudices that happen in the workplace, right? So I've got a responsibility there. And I think that Christians who go into political service, or Christians who are teachers, they have a responsibility to speak out and act out in ways that correct and bring and fix and help to bridge that divide in whatever vocation that they're involved in. And I think that's why God puts us all in different vocations. We're not all just
Yes.
pastors, right? For that reason, because we have the ability to have an impact in whatever our circle of influence is. And I think we've all got to do that.
I'm gonna add one question to this. And I'm gonna say the last question for last, the best I believe. But the Bible says that let your light so shine before men, they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Do you think that as Christians, that the way we handle certain things, the way that we do certain things, can turn people from God? It can make people not want to be Christians.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely, and you see that all the time. I'll tell you this: most people who have a problem with Christianity don't really have a problem with Christianity. They have a problem with a Christian somewhere,
Oh, that's
right?
good.
You know what I mean? I mean, they've been hurt by a Christian at some point, and so because Christ hadn't done them wrong.
That's
You know
true.
what I mean? Christ hadn't done anything wrong to him. There's a and man, I can't think of who it was, but there's a quote that I think about it was a religious leader, not non-Christian religious leader, who said of Christians, said, you know what? When I read your Bible and I love your Christ, it's your Christians I don't like very much. Right.
Wow.
And so
Was it
we've
Gundy?
got to make sure that one, that as Christians, we have a responsibility to reflect Christ to the world, and we've got to make sure that they understand who he is, right? That one, we're not perfect. None of us, we're going to make mistakes. And so we've always tried to point them to him, but we have a responsibility to make sure that we're not a hindrance
Yeah.
to people accepting Christ by the treatment that we give them. And I think that's why I speak about empathy all the time. That's why I talk about empathy and the importance of it. Because people want to know. They don't. Empathy does, and I touched on this earlier, but I hear this criticism a lot when people will push back on me when I talk about empathy. They act as if, or they talk as if empathy is pity. It's not, right? It's not feeling sorry for or feeling bad about something. Empathy is saying, I hear you. I'm doing my best to understand and feel you. It means that when the Bible tells us that we are to weep with those who weep, that's empathy, right? I think about Paul in First Corinthians when he said, that I become all things to all
All
men so
things.
that by all means, right,
Yes,
somebody,
yeah.
right, might be saved. That's empathy. That was Paul speaking about empathy, about saying that I'm going to go where people are, try to understand who they are and what they're feeling, and reach them where they're at. Because if we cannot empathize with somebody, then we're never going to lead them to Christ. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter how good the sermon might be. Now, you might preach a great sermon and someone may come down and they may say a prayer, but there's got to be a relationship that happens at that point for discipleship. And you can't disciple somebody if you can't have a relationship with somebody. And you're not going to have authentic relationship very long with someone if you can't show them any kind of empathy. So I think that's absolutely crucial for us.
Yeah. So my last question is this, brother. The Bible says a righteous person leaves an inheritance for their children's children. What
Yeah,
type of world do you want to leave for your grandkids? If
yeah.
you can do something right now that will eternally affect their world and the world that you're going to give them, what would that be?
Well, so obviously, as a Christian, the first thing I want is them to have a relationship with Christ, right? I think that has to be first and foremost. But as far as the world is concerned, outside of that, and I should even say outside of that, but as a part of that, is what we should all be seeking is a world that is more like what Christ has called it to be, right? It is more like the creation that God intended, that God created. And I think that to do that, we've got to leave them a world where there is unity, where there is love, where the church is leading out front on these things, where they know that they don't, I'll put it this way. So I can think back growing up, right? I don't want my children to deal with the same issues that I dealt with, right, growing up. And I can remember times being conflicted because I was in church with people that maybe I looked up to, and I thought highly of, maybe people even that led me, that were instrumental in leading me to Christ, and then I heard them say something extremely racist,
Yeah.
right? And all of a sudden, man, there was such a conflict in me, going like, what in the world? How do I reconcile, right, my faith and who Christ is and what I believe and what I thought of these people with now the things that they're saying, and I don't want, and so we have to understand that, again, none of us are perfect, right? And everybody has their faults. But what I hope for is that my children and my grandchildren will live in a world that is more reflective, and more importantly, that their lives in the circles that they're in, the church that they're a part of, is more reflective of who Christ is. I don't worry as much about the outside world and what the outside world looks like as much as I do what the church looks like, right? Because the church is called to be the salt of the earth for a reason, right? It's called to preserve it. And so I understand that there's a lot in the world that may get worse, may get worse, may get better. But what I hope is that we're leaving them a legacy of unity, of love,
Yeah.
of empathy, that we are leaving them a church that
Yes.
is closer to being that spotless bride that Christ has
Amen.
called it to be than what it
Amen.
was when we found it. And I think
Amen.
that has to be our first responsibility, I think, to our children.
Wow,
Yep.
brother, that's good, Kendall. Love you, man. Definitely appreciate you coming on and sharing
Yes,
your
sir.
thoughts
Thank you.
and just allowing the world to see and dispel that all white people are rich. And they
Yeah.
see that you and I are brothers who struggle. We're still struggling together. I got your
Right.
back, you got mine, and that we need to see each other as humans and not as a racial stereotype. But brother,
Yep.
thank you for coming on and being a part of our small group tonight. Love you. Give my love to Robin and the kids.
I will, man. Hey, and I'm just waiting on you to make it big, man, because you're my meal ticket. So just, I'm waiting on you. All right.
I got some hair lotion products that I need to try
There
out.
you go.
But every
That may
time
work.
I put them on my scalp, the hair never grows back. So I got
That
to
may
find
work, man. That
something.
might be it. All right. I love you too, Derek. Thanks for
Love
the
you, brother.
opportunity, man.
All right,
Bye.
brother. Bye bye.
Our world. See,
Okay, you too.
so family, that was one of my best friends in the entire world, Kendall Deshay Nash. He and I go way back, full flats on the Cadillac, literally. Anyway, we talked about several things today, and the reason why I wanted to bring Kendall on is because I wanted to dispel some myths that all white people are racist. It's not true. We have to throw off these religious and even racial stereotypes that the world tries to teach us. This brother works a normal 9 to 5 like everybody else. He has good days, he has bad days. He has days where he's doing well, days where he's struggling. And I think that we need to see each other as humans, and we need to fight for that. We cannot allow these racial stereotypes to determine how we treat someone. I said I wrote a post yesterday said that the way you treat people is your reflection of God. If you see people and you treat people with judgment, then that's how you see God. That God is constantly judging you and He's constantly looking down on you. But if you really know the true God of the Bible, the God of heaven and earth, you know He is a loving, compassionate Father. And that's how we should treat each other. The Word says this that we need to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And Jesus displayed that love by coming to the earth in the likeness of sinful men, and He died for us. The Bible says there's no greater love than a man will do this. He will lay down his life for his friend. And I love Kendall. I will lay down my life for him. I'll lay down my life for his family. We are raising our kids together. Kendall, Robin, and Tiffany and I, we raised a group of girls in Tallahassee, Florida. We were family. I can walk in their house, they can walk in my house. And we have family traditions simply because we love one another. So the question I have for all of us is this: what type of world will you leave for your children? Will it be a world full of unity and love in the way you raise them and the values that you give them? Or will it be a world of judgment and hate? There's Those of us who are Christians, it is our responsibility to make sure that we make righteousness look attractive, that people want to become Christian. I remember when I first started learning the Bible, the only Christians I knew were people I did not want to be like. I did not want to emulate the type of character that I saw. So I put myself around people who were like Kendall, who were like Mario, who had a compassion and a gentle spirit of God towards them, not someone who was just full of hatred and judgment. That's not Christianity, because it is our responsibility to make sure that we make Christ look so attractive that everyone we come around will want to be like us. So, what world do you want to leave your children? The world that I want to leave my daughter and my grandchildren is for them to grow up in a world full of love and compassion for everyone. To see everyone that they come across and treat everyone they come across as family. Every man that I meet, I call him brother. We may not be biologically related, but he's a human. And because he's a human, that's my brother. That's the world I want to leave my child. That's the world I want to leave my grandchildren. Is that everyone that they see is family. Love you guys. Thank you for tuning in tonight. We will be having random access tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Tomorrow we're just going to continue these talks of racial unity. On Thursday morning, we're going to have on my brother David Haddon from the UK. He's a worship artist. He's going to be talking about what we can do as Christians during this time of global pandemic, how to keep ourselves refreshed in the spirit. Good night.